It's what Democrats have hoped, it's what Republicans have feared, and it just ain't happening. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, there's a big think piece in the New York Times analyzing some of the early Census 2020 data that's coming in. We briefly discussed last week during our Backstage Members Only episode that we are shifting some congressional seats from Democrats to Republicans because of the new head count, and that would, of course, also shift the balance in the Electoral College. This story was really about this almost mythological idea among pundits and politicians that Democrats are going to benefit by huge immigration numbers as we're just going to shorthand them, brown people come in from other countries. So these Hispanics, Asian Americans, multiracial people from other countries coming in, and that Republicans are going to suffer because, of course, white people vote for Republicans and brown people vote for Democrats. That's the simple version of the story. As it's turned out, though, that's not exactly what's happening. In fact, the immigrants are growing, the Hispanics and Asians and multiracial people are growing as a percentage of the electorate, but they're not as monolithically Democrat as black voters, for example. In fact, only about 60 to 65% of them identify as Democrats, and that's like 20 or 30 points short of how blacks vote. Stephen Green, this poses, I think, an interesting quandary for both parties because Democrats had really been, saying, hey, let's get organized, let's loosen up the borders, let's get more people in here, or at least that's the way we portray them. And because those people would find a natural home in the Democratic Party, as it turns out, they're not. But Republicans were also wrong because they were essentially saying the same thing, but saying, we don't want this to happen. We fear this happening. The white proportion of the electorate is down 2 points from 73 to 71% of the electorate. The immigrant population is up. Blacks are flat. So it's really not working out the way either party thought. What do you make of this somewhat startling political news?
Well, the first thing is everybody needs to acknowledge, and Bill's segment is going to touch on this issue, but reality has a way of biting us all on the ass when we're not paying attention. That's just the way it works. And the thing is, you got to roll with it. You've got to learn from your mistakes and proceed on with a little more knowledge and hopefully a little more wisdom. We don't see a whole lot of that in the political sphere, but that's politics. What was missed, I think it was James Carville who wrote about the permanent Democratic majority, that these demographic shifts were going to be to the exclusive benefit of the Democratic Party and, let them rule unencumbered for 40 years. And it's turning out probably not to be true. What Carville's book missed is that there's also a realignment going on between the two parties. And this is essential. The GOP is becoming more of a working man's party, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a good thing for a couple of reasons. Number one, the country club Republicans haven't done a damn bit of good for the party. I'm looking at you, George W. and George H.W. and Mitt. And the Wall Street Republicans no longer exist. Wall Street is in bed with the Democratic Party and has been increasingly so for the last 20 years. And the people who have been screwed over by the Democratic policies and the sort of just let things go policy of the country club Republicans, those people are turning more to the GOP and Donald Trump, who is both a cause and a symptom of this realignment. More of a symptom, but he definitely helped push things along. And that's shown nowhere stronger than down in Texas, where the Rio Grande Valley counties, deeply blue, are undergoing a shift towards the GOP. And believe me, those counties aren't getting any whiter. They are still heavily Latino. One of them, Zapata County, in the 28th district, is represented by sort of a centrist Democrat, Henry Cuellar. Clinton beat Trump there 2-1, 66% to 33%. Donald Trump won there in 2020, 52 to 47. That is huge. And 4 years of calling Donald Trump anti-Latin racist had no effect on these voters. They saw the chaos on the border under Obama. They didn't like it. They saw Donald Trump restore order to that border, and they did like it. Because if there's one thing that everybody can agree on, legal immigration is great. Illegal immigration, not so great. And if I were the GOP, I would build on Trump's message, not of make America great again, but America is a great country. You came here legally for a reason. You are patriots from wherever you came from, whether it was Mexico or Guatemala, Venezuela, El Salvador, what. You love your country, but you came here because your country isn't run very well. The Democrats want to make this country more like the place you fled from. We want to keep it great. That's the message. And we saw Donald Trump flip Zapata County in a big way. We got a lot of work to do, but we can do this.
Bill Whittle, according to this New York Times story, and this is by Nate Cohn, who's always writing on political statistics, Donald Trump, over the course of 4 years in office, may have lost a half a point because of demographic shifts. Nothing like what anybody thought it was. It was a very small movement there. But the story says it's remarkably Mr. Biden's fairly modest gains among white voters helped him as much as the last 30 to 40 years of demographic shifts did. In other words, it's white voters that Republicans should be more concerned about because some of them like Joe and they voted for Joe. In fact, he says it's hard to find a single state where growing racial diversity was necessary or sufficient for Democrats to flip a state. Even in Georgia and Arizona, Democrats needed significant increases from white voters to get over the top. How do you think this affects messaging going forward, specifically for the Republican Party?
Well, I'd like to concentrate on the immigration aspect of this because that's the variable, right? I mean, that's the big topic of discussion. Does immigration help the Republicans or help the Democrats? And I think one of the things that this data shows us is that it's more important than where you come from is where you're going. If you are the kind of person who comes to America and then relocates in a rural area, you are far more likely to vote Republican. And if you're one of those people that moves specifically into an inner city area or a city area, then you're more likely to vote Democrat. There's some self-selection there. But basically what that's telling me is that your politics are largely determined by whether you're a rural citizen or an urban citizen. And the big shift is away from the cities. So that's the actual tide. It's not so much a question of immigrants coming into the country so much as people are leaving cities because they don't work and going to rural areas that do. And those are Republican run areas. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think a much bigger part of it, frankly, is that the Democrats aren't getting the benefit that they thought they get because they're no longer the Democrats. They're nothing like the party that they used to be. As you guys have both pointed out, they're certainly not the party of small guy now. The little guy votes Republican. And the reason that the little guy votes Republican, and most immigrants are little guys because, frankly, if you're wealthy, you're not in any particular need to tear out your home and move halfway around the world. And if you're an immigrant, you just got here by definition. I think the reason that they're not voting for Democrats anymore is because the Democratic Party has been so consumed with, we all know about woke and progressivism and stuff, but these are essentially luxury beliefs, right? These are luxury beliefs, and they're issues that affect people who don't have to worry about things like jobs. If your entire party platform is based on things like transgendered athletes and your concern is with, making energy more expensive so it can be more green. These are not things that appeal to people who are working class people. These are luxury beliefs. These are white liberal beliefs. And as the Democratic Party becomes more and more woke and more openly woke, new arrivals in this country who came here for a better life and a better economic future are finding they're finding that the people who are running the country they came to are doing everything in their power to make everything more expensive and more silly, less concerned with real life issues like economy and jobs and so on. So I think it's a combination of where they're headed, and I think it's a combination of, as Ronald Reagan said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me.
Now, having run for office in the past, one of the things that really used to bother me is that Republicans would only go and campaign where they were already successful. They print out these lists. I don't know if you've ever been involved in a political campaign, even at the grassroots door knocking level, you'll realize that there are these lists, and they get the 3-3 and the 4-3 Republicans. Those are Republicans who voted in 3 out of the last 4 elections or 4 out of the last 4 elections. And all we do is we go around door to door, or we make phone calls to call the 3-3 and 4-4 Republicans to make sure that they show up on election day, and we ignore everybody else. We walk past 5 houses to knock on the door of the 3-3 the 3-4 or the 4-4, because Republicans have this theory that you should go where you're successful. You should go where you want to win. I have the reverse theory. You can be successful where you're willing to go. And the problem is that they're not willing to go to the people who don't already agree with them. Frankly, the Republican Party at the electoral level, the officials in the Republican Party are a bunch of pussies. They just can't stand at the door of somebody who doesn't already agree with them and have an intelligent conversation and show respect and dignity and mercy and love toward their neighbor so that they can win that person over to their way of thinking. They'd much rather go to the backslapping partisan who's going to shake their hand and be delighted to take 4 of their brochures so they can give them to their friends at the country club or at the fire station or wherever they happen to work. That's not how you grow a movement. And the thing that the census data is starting to show us is that if you're an investor, you don't invest in the stock that's dying and shows no signs of turning around, which is white proportion of the electorate. It is going down, and we ain't having babies. So it's keep going down. You don't pour all your money into the people who aren't going anywhere and say, well, the black voters, they're just going to be consistent. They vote overwhelmingly Democrat, but they're not grown because they're not having babies like they used to either, or like we used to either. You go where the growth is, and the growth is in legal immigration. Frankly, the growth is in illegal immigration. The growth is in populations that manufacture new humans at an increasing rate or a higher rate than the norm in the United States. You want to grow your party? You connect with the people who are growing your country. And that makes all the difference. Everything Steve and Bill said, I think, is totally relevant and true about this thing. But the heart of the matter is that Republicans are afraid to do the necessary work to go into the places where they haven't won and make the case that they should win in terms that the voter can understand. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.